with the climate change, what's the leading cause of that?
Well, it's basically burning too many fossil fuels. So coal, natural gas, oil, tar sands, oil shale, all these new exotic fuels that are kind of hybrids between them. But that's basically what is loading up the atmosphere. So we have this greenhouse effect where the heat is getting trapped and the temperatures are soaring at a rate that has never existed in the history of the Earth.
And what about livestock and animal agriculture?
Well, what about it? I mean,
you want to do it? Just research. A couple of the UN report says it's more. Livestock accounts for more than all transportation put together. A recent 2009 World Watch report, livestock causes 51% of all greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah, well, it is a big issue, and we need to address that as well. But, there's just so many different potential sources of methane and carbon emissions.
If the number one leading cause is animal agriculture and meat consumption, then doesn't that need to be the number one focus, if not the number two?
Well, that's your assessment. Our assessment is different.
That was bizarre. So Greenpeace got back to me today and said, "It was great to meet with you yesterday. I've spoken with various people here at Greenpeace about your request, but I'm afraid we're not going to be able to help this time. Thanks again, and we wish you the best of luck." Greenpeace's response reminded me of the statistic that 116,000 pounds of farm animal excrement is produced every second in the United States alone. That is enough waste per year to cover every square foot of San Francisco, New York City, Tokyo, Paris, New Delhi, Berlin, Hong Kong, London, Rio de Janeiro, Delaware, Bali, Costa Rica, and Denmark combined.
Livestock operations on land has caused created more than 500 nitrogen-flooded dead zones around the world in our oceans, comprise more than 95,000 square miles of areas completely devoid of life. So any meaningful discussion about the state of our oceans has to always begin by frank discussions about land-based animal agriculture, which is not what our conservation groups, Oceana being the largest one in the world right now, the most influential, as well as others, that's not what is at the apex of their discussions.
I went on my favorite ocean protection organization's website, Surfrider Foundation, to see what they were doing about this. Mostly what I found were campaigns about plastic bags and trash, but nothing about animal agriculture.
What is the number one coastal water quality issue polluter?
A lot of it, it's actually, we call it the toxic cocktail, because it really is this sort of diffuse source. So it's, heavy metal from tires and brakes and cars, heavy metals. It is these herbicides and pesticides. It's really it's kind of picking up the everything we leave on the ground and collecting it together and pushing it out into the ocean. So it's hard to actually target one thing.
We're doing our research on this particular one and runoff, and just kind of increasingly as we're interviewing more and more people, it keeps coming up. The animal agriculture as being, and we read animal agriculture as being the number one water polluter, considerably by more than any other.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think, I guess it depends on the regions that you focus on, like the urban areas, which is sort of like where we are here in Southern California. We don't see that because there's not a lot of sort of agricultural farms. But if you look in the mid-Atlantic, sort of Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, that region, I know there's a lot of poultry farms and a lot of hog farms, and it's a huge waste issue.
I was surprised that not only did they not focus on farm runoff, but they also didn't mention any campaigns about how our oceans are in near collapse. The UN reported that 3/4 of the world's fisheries are overexploited, fully exploited, or significantly depleted due to overfishing.
The oceans are under siege like never before, and marine environments are in trouble. And if we don't wake up and do something about it, we're going to see fishless oceans by the year 2048. That's the prediction from scientists.
The fact that when people look at fishing sometimes, they're only looking at the fact of the animals who are actually consumed by humans, and we're not necessarily looking at all the animals who are caught in the drift nets, all the other animals who are killed in the industry. And when you look at even the shrimping industry has done a lot to devastate the planet as well in terms of breaking down natural barriers that we have to protect the islands.
We're at over 28 billion animals were pulled out of the ocean last year. They're not ever given a chance to recover. They can't recover. They don't multiply that quickly. They don't, they don't come back. We're not giving them an opportunity.
The oceans are in complete collapse. The large fish species are nearing extinction.
The way fishing is done today to feed the demand for 90 million tons of fish is primarily through massive fish nets. For every single pound of fish caught, there's up to 5 pounds of untargeted species trapped, such as dolphins, whales, sea turtles, and sharks, known as bykill. If we were to imagine this same sort of practice happening on the African savanna, targeting gazelle, but in the process scooping up every single lion, giraffe, ostrich, and elephant, nobody would stand for it. Yet, this is what is happening in our oceans every single day.
Between 40 and 50 million sharks each year are killed in fishing lines and fishing nets as bykill. Then their fins might be cut off or not cut off, but they're caught initially as bykill, and it's from fishing. It's from fishing in a sustainable manner, in many cases, for fish that are labeled sustainable by, for instance, Oceana and these sustainable certified organizations. So my thought is that why would we want to stop at banning shark fin soup if you're concerned about sharks, which all these organizations are, and most of the public at large is now. If we really are concerned about sharks, we would ban fishing.
I went on the world's largest ocean conservation group's website, Oceana, to see what they were doing about this. On their site, along with a TED Talk by CEO Andy Sharpless, I was astounded to read they actually recommend that one of the best ways to help fish is to eat fish. With the world's fish population in near collapse, this seems like saying the best way to help endangered pandas is to eat pandas. I couldn't understand how Oceana could say we could remove close to 100 million tons of fish per year, and that could somehow be sustainable and good for our oceans.
Many of the species that are nearing extinction have done so, are being ravaged and becoming nearly extinct in a declining fashion and haven't recovered on the watch of Oceana and on the watch of Marine Stewardship Council, and very much on the watch of Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch, which, I mentioned in one of my lectures. That's, they're aptly named because that's what they're doing. They're sort of watching this happen instead of, aggressively halting it.
I mean, according to the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, roughly 3/4 of all the fisheries out there are either fully exploited or overexploited. So there's really not a whole lot of fish stocks out there that you might consider at healthy levels for the ecosystem.
Watching Andy's TED Talk gave about feeding the world. In 1988, fish catch, as you mentioned, peaked at 85 million tons. How is it possible that we can sustainably catch 100 million tons by 2050? Regardless if it's in a farm or if it's in the ocean, if for every pound of fish you're taking out, you're essentially taking out 5 pounds of wild fish, no matter whether it's a pond or it's in the ocean. How can that be sustainable?
The ultimate question, right, is that there is a tremendous amount of natural production that is, basically coming out of the oceans all the time. So we have a massive amount of upwelling from our ocean conveyor belt that's bringing up, ancient 1,000-year-old nutrients, and our ecosystems are turning that into fish. Yes, they're eating each other, and you're losing some of that production every step up in the food chain, but you get more every year. You can fish and take some out, and next year there will be more. And if we do that right without ultimately hitting the fundamental driver, it's sort of like living off the interest, right? As long as you don't bring your principal down, right, if you're investing in something, as long as you're not hitting into that principal and your principal remains high, you could potentially live off the interest forever. And that's the basic idea with fish.
With our population right now, what we're doing is 75% depleted, the fishery is now depleted. And, you know, it's a good analogy with money. We're not living off our interest. We're in extreme debt. And if our population who's trying to live as a family on the same amount of money, and it's increasing 35% to 9 billion people,
Right.
isn't it just, hey, we got to stop spending money?
Yeah.
We need to stop eating fish.
Well, if you could bring the principle back.
Fishing of any type is depleting not only the species, but you get into this serial depletion where one fish species will be minimized and the fishing industry for that fishery will move on to the next species. And it's called serial depletion, aptly named. And in the process, so the fish are being lost, not only the species is being lost, but the next in line is being lost, and then the mechanism is still extremely destructive. So they're losing the fish species, but it needs to be kept in mind they're also destroying habitat.
I think they came up with this term, sustainable fishing, to make ourselves feel good about eating fish and continuing to take fish out of the oceans, when in fact, really, it's Sea Shepherd's position that there is no such thing as sustainable fishing.
Seafood is not a protein source for a sustainable protein source for the feeding of the planet, for the people on the planet. It's just not.
People don't want to hear it because that makes them feel like they have to take action. They have to stop doing something, and a lot of people don't want to, and people don't want to, they don't want to put it out there because it's uncomfortable. They don't want to propose to tell people what to do, but we're at a point where we all have to be cognizant and we have to realize we have to take an action.
Our founder, Captain Watson, likes to say, if the oceans die, we die. That's not a tagline. That's the truth.
Perhaps the only other ecosystem that is being destroyed at such a rapid rate are the world's rainforests. Our global rainforests are essentially the planet's lungs. They breathe in CO2 and exhale oxygen. An acre of rainforest is cleared every second, and the leading cause is to graze animals and grow their feed crops. That is essentially an entire football field cleared every single second. And it is estimated that every day, close to 100 plant, animal, and insect species are lost due to rainforest destruction.
What is the leading cause, absolute leading cause of rainforest destruction?
Human intervention into rainforests is the leading cause. And so it's either for logging or it's for agribusiness. And that's when you're looking at the top global drivers, it will vary a bit by the rainforest that you're talking about. But the way that we're choosing to use these natural resources on a large industrial scale is the leading driver.
When I went on Rainforest Action Network's website, I couldn't believe I didn't see anything about cattle. But I did see they had a large campaign against palm oil. Palm oil plantations are causing tremendous deforestation in the Indonesian rainforest. It is estimated that palm oil is responsible for 26 million acres being cleared. Though, compared to livestock and their feed crops, they were responsible for 136 million acres of rainforest lost to date. But on their website, I was shocked to find cattle was not included as one of their 4 main key issues. Instead, they focused on palm, pulp and paper, coal, and tar sands. How could they not have the leading cause of rainforest destruction? I had to wonder, why focus on fossil fuels and not cattle?
Is it more fossil fuels or is it more animal agriculture?
I don't know why we would ever do a one or the other.
I'm just wondering, what more is it?
I don't necessarily know what it is.
Could the executive director of one of the world's largest rainforest protection groups honestly not know what was going on? Or even worse, were they hiding it on purpose? And if so, why? I immediately went to Amazon Watch to see if they would say what the leading cause of rainforest destruction truly is.
The most biologically and culturally diverse place on the planet is under massive attack right now. The Amazon rainforest itself could be gone in the matter of the next 10 years.
What is the leading cause of rainforest destruction?
The leading cause of rainforest destruction, I would say, well, just to put it into the context of what Amazon Watch works on, you know, there's many drivers of deforestation, as we call them, many different reasons and ways that rainforests are destroyed. The ones that cause the most damage and are the most widespread are mega projects, such as oil and gas pipelines, such as mining projects, such as mega dam projects. We're not talking about...
I felt like I was going in circles with all these groups, as if I were stuck in some strange Cowspiracy twilight zone where no one could talk about cows. I couldn't believe these organizations just wouldn't say what the leading cause of rainforest destruction truly is. I had to ask one more time.
It's hard to say what is a leading cause of deforestation of the Amazon because they're all destructive: oil and gas, mining, dams, agriculture. But in terms of land use, in terms of the amount of land that is destroyed by when we talk about, in comparison, all those different causes of deforestation, what is causing the most trees to fall, for example? I think it would definitely be agriculture. Unfortunately, one of the biggest causes of deforestation, definitely in the Brazilian Amazon, is agribusiness, cattle grazing, and soy production in particular.
This is really what's going on. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that's, like, no Greenpeace or no one really saying the whole story?
The whole story about one of the main cause of deforestation. And I think you brought up some really good points about why isn't anybody doing anything about this? And I think in Brazil in particular, I think when we look at what happened after the forest code was passed, and people who were standing up against the lobbyists and the interests, the special interests, the cattle industry, the agribusiness industry, what was happening to them? A lot of people were speaking out, got killed. And if you look at, say Carlos, you look at Claudio, there's people who are putting themselves out there and saying, cattle ranching, is destroying the Amazon. A lot of those people were really putting themselves out there. And look at Dorothy Stang, the nun who lived out in Pará, who was killed. A lot of people will speak up. A lot of people just keep their mouths shut because they don't want to be the next one with a bullet to their head.
Sister Dorothy Stang was a U.S.-born nun living in the heart of the Brazilian rainforest. Her life's work was to protect the Amazon. She spoke out openly against the destruction of rainforests from cattle ranching for years. Walking home one night, she was brutally gunned down at point-blank range by a hired gun from the cattle industry. After Greenpeace's initial denial for an interview, I wrote again, begging they reconsider. Greenpeace got back again and said again, I'm afraid we've explored the options here in terms of helping you and are not going to be able to be involved this time. You mentioned you were also speaking to Oceana. I'm sure they'll be able to give you some great quotes about ocean-related issues. Thanks again for thinking of us.